what?
A yob.
Oh.
Boy backwards, so it's kind of like a naughty boy.
Oh. I've never heard that. Huh, yob.
Kind of mischievous boy.
I like
Little
that.
troublemaker.
What is it about this moment in time and culture that means that people are looking at the human body as something very arbitrary, that they really can create the character they wish to be? And are they creating a character because they want to be that character, or because they don't want to be the one they are? Sometimes I think people change in order to refuse the given character and shape, rather than to become the other one. And sometimes it's absolutely a rejection of a stereotype. It's the first time we've had dominion over evolution and over the shape and potential of where the mind lives. That's a huge change. It's probably the beginning of the change from being a clever animal into being a human being, or a humane being, a consciously aware, choosing consciousness, a mind that says, this is how I would like to be carried around, instead of, I have no choice. And I think it's not just a mistake that 50 years ago approximately the atom got split. 50 years approximately ago LSD appeared, which in a sense was the first mass shamanic experience was available. For the very first time almost anybody could have a divine revelation. And the same with the technology of medicine too, which all three go together, I think, to the possibility of consciousness, attitude, and the human body being forever changed, which would change the species. That's why I think it's so important. I think it's the first evidence of a major coming change, a necessary change too. And I actually see transsexuals and transvestites and people who are even, like Jocelyn Wildenstein, utilising cosmetic surgery in an even more radical way, not just the traditional ways. And even Pamela Anderson Lee, I think she will be seen at some point to have had a massive influence on people's tolerance of and comfort zone with cosmetic surgery. I really do. I think Baywatch, surprisingly, will be remembered for its generation of tolerance of cosmetic and artificial body alteration. And we had the tattoos and the piercings, and it's also part of that same deep need in people to get back to a real relationship with the body as well. If we construct ourselves, then the self can be anything we want it to be. And again, there's been a change in consciousness in the body and what we can do with the body and the mind at this point. I think we're on the threshold of becoming new creatures, and ultimately liberated from the body, and through that going back to being pure consciousness, which is to become one with God again. And there's an argument that I tend towards, which is that each human being is a tiny bit of God understanding how it became self-conscious, and that we will all ultimately become God again, and this time God will be aware of itself and will have experienced everything possible to experience, and will become the ultimate non-gender specific, non-species specific liberated being. And that's why gender and body shape and all these other things are significant. They represent our waking up to change and our waking up to our deeper self. And as in all times of great change and a radical shift in a species, there's conflict between the old species and the new form of the species. Just as at one time those 3.5 million year old semi-humans didn't make it because perhaps they only ate one kind of food and that disappeared and they died. The other ones, who were probably the freaks that could eat everything and ran around hitting things with stones, ended up being the ones who survived to this day. So I tend to assume that the minorities that challenge all preconceptions are the precursors of an evolutionary shift, a species change. And that's why I'm fascinated with all the possible indicators on the street, in fashion and in presentation and in the gradual demolition of gender, because I see them as incredibly important signifiers of a spiritual and evolutionary alteration. If I'd have known I was doing this, I would have shaved my legs. This is just not good. Nope.
Shave your leg. We have a washing room. I can wax your leg.
Oh, I don't like that very much. It hurts. This is kind of novel.